So this month, the Centre is welcoming Dr Karlo Basta as our new co-director for the Centre. Karlo is a lecturer in politics at the University of Edinburgh, where he joined from Memorial University of Newfoundland. Karlo brings a comparative element to the team as his work focuses on the comparative politics of nationalism, with his research into multinational states, institutional formation and change in multinational systems. I'm here to introduce Karlo as our new co-director and get to know him a little better. Hi Karlo, and welcome to CCC.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for doing this.
So, as I mentioned, you joined from the Memorial University of Newfoundland and you're currently a lecturer at the University of Edinburgh. Can you tell us a little more about the positions you've previously held and any other positions you hold at the moment?
Right. So, I arrived to University of Edinburgh. I've taken up the lectureship earlier this year in January. Seems like a lot longer in light of everything that's been happening over the past 6 or 7 months. But yeah, it's recent. And prior to that, as you mentioned, I spent somewhere in the order of 7 years at Memorial University of Newfoundland, first as a lecturer or assistant professor in North American terms, and then ultimately as a senior lecturer, so associate professor. And really, all of my academic career has been in Canada, first in Toronto and then in St. John's. So moving here has been quite a big deal for me, but I'm happy about the move. In part because I've been exploring the possibility of returning to Europe for quite some time now.
Great, and we're glad that you've come to Edinburgh.
Cheers.
So, as I mentioned, your research focuses on the comparative politics of nationalism. Could you tell us a little more about your research interest? Do you have any research projects on the go at the moment?
Right. So, this is, you already covered it quite well. My core interest really is how multinational states, so places like the UK, Spain, Canada, and others, how they work, and when they fail to work, why they fail to work. And this is really this research interest really is an outcome of lived experience. So I am originally from Croatia, or when I was born, it was Yugoslavia still. So that country broke apart. Then I moved to Canada in the early 1990s. This was 2 years prior to the 1995 Quebec referendum. And then as a consequence of some of the work that I've done subsequent to that, I spent a number of, or had a number of visits to Spain, particularly to Catalonia. And I was there during the recent events over the past decade. And then ultimately moved to the UK, another multi or plurinational state. So in a sense, this personal trajectory has shaped my research interests. In terms of the more specific focus, I'm interested really in the gamut of issues surrounding the institutional or constitutional question of multinational states, right? So I look at why and how institutions, particularly institutions of territorial autonomy or federal institutions, how they are instituted, how they develop, with what kinds of political consequences. And then finally, and ultimately, I'm also looking at the question of state breakup or secession, including referenda on independence. So that's the broad sketch of the kind of research that I do. In terms of specific projects, I think I can foreground two. One is a monograph that is going to be coming out with McGill Queen's University Press, probably within about a year, so early next autumn. And it is called Multinational States, Minority Recognition, Majority Backlash, and Secessionist Crises, which is a mouthful, I know. But it gives the sense of what the argument is. The central idea really is that institutions, so for example, either asymmetric or symmetric federal arrangements, that these institutions are as important for the identities that they express as they are for the interests that they may advance or undermine. And so this is a comparative study. It's taken me quite a few years to complete. It looks at Spain, Canada, former Yugoslavia, former Czechoslovakia, with some lessons for other parts of the world. So that's one project, and I'm very happy with that one. Another one, which is ongoing, looks at, it's also a comparative study. It looks at the role of business in the lead up to independence referenda. So more specifically, I'm kind of looking at the way in which private business tries to influence debates about the economic consequences of potential independence. And the look is at Catalonia, Quebec, and Scotland, obviously. But the project really is actually about social power. Right? What social power is, how it works. Closer to home, obviously, it has implications for where the issue of independence might go in Scotland, but it also has implications for Brexit, things of that nature. So that's what the research is at this point.
So you're a busy man.
I keep myself busy, more or less, yes.
Well, what are your career highlights so far? Obviously, other than becoming co-director, any highlights or?
Which is definitely a highlight, I have to say. So, I mean, you know, I guess the initial response to that would be that I suppose it depends on the day you ask. But I guess I can foreground two, both very recent. One is the book that I just told you about, right? And the reason that I consider it to be a highlight is because, first of all, it started as a doctoral dissertation project in 2004. So given that I finished it in July of this year, this is about 16 years. And it's taken years of field work, personal experience, and sort of drawing on material in somewhere in the order of 5 or 6 different languages. So I'm pretty proud and happy about that project. It's also, it's a response to the question that motivated my entry into academia, which is, as I mentioned to you, I'm from former Yugoslavia, and my motivating question at the beginning was what happened to that country and what has happened to countries similar to it, right? So being able to finally put all of that together and provide a semblance of an answer for myself, which is very much a personal or answer to a personal question, is very, very gratifying. And I hope it's going to be useful to scholars or people interested in these kinds of issues, right? So that's one highlight. And the second one, without being too gushing, really is having secured a position here at University of Edinburgh. And the reason that I think it's a highlight, although it's early days, granted, is that I don't think there's a place in the world, really, where my professional and research interests are as good a fit as they are here. So I'm very, very excited to be here, both at the University of Edinburgh and at the Centre on Constitutional Change.
And talking of the centre, what are your ambitions as you take up the position of co-director? Where do you see the centre going in the next few years?
So, I mean, I want to preface the answer by saying that I've been a fan of the Centre for a while now. And in fact, I was a visiting fellow here both last year and 2017, so I've been familiar with it, and I've been admiring it from afar and the research that's been coming out. And I've always been impressed by the way in which scholarly insight produced by Centre Fellows and the Centre has been combined with what really timely and original policy commentary and various outreach activities. So that's always been really, really impressive to me. And the Centre's focus has been on the UK and Scotland, and that's an obvious strength. And I expect that it is going to continue being so. But as you said, my own expertise is in comparative work. So I've looked at a variety of cases beyond UK shores. And I think there is room to take the Centre in this more comparative direction, for example, by extending the results of our own research beyond the UK, which has already been done by the Centre, but I think that more can be done along these lines. And also, I think there's room to see how insights from elsewhere can inform our understanding of what is happening, seen through the constitutional prism in the UK and Scotland, and what might be happening in the future. So a good example of this would be to see how, for instance, the political dynamics in Spain and Catalonia in between 2011 and 2017 might inform how we see the question of independence, potential independence referendum in Scotland going forward, right? So that's a kind of an example of that. I think also there's room to strengthen the Centre's links with other nodes of research in and around the university, so various departments, centres, associations, and the like.
So it sounds like there'll be a lot of new projects coming from you, and we've already started introducing quite a few new projects with the Centre this year. So what are you most excited to be involved in at the Centre, and why?
So, I mean, it's going to be a kind of a generic answer to that question, but it's true, right? It's the center is just such a dynamic, interdisciplinary place, as a kind of a meeting point of so much diverse expertise by practitioners, policymakers, scholars, and journalists as well. So between them, but also towards the general public. And so being in the midst of all of this is very, very exciting, especially in this moment of flux, right? With Brexit, with challenges of pandemic, with changes in public opinion in Scotland on the issue of independence and things of that nature. So it's really just the fact that it's such a happening place for creation of knowledge and exchange of knowledge from so many different angles. This really excites me.
As you mentioned, Brexit and the current pandemic, we're likely to see a lot of constitutional change in the kind of near future. What can we expect to see next from the centre in light of this kind of turbulence?
I mean, I would expect that we'll continue to build on our strengths and facilitate research and provide commentary and analysis on the constitutional question as it relates to current challenges of Brexit, of COVID-19 and the like. But at the same time, I think we're looking to derive some broader insights about the link between major external shocks, such as the pandemic, but also other major events, on the way in which institutions, both in the UK and beyond, change, right? With obviously the emphasis of the territorial question. And I also think we'll be taking a closer look at the way people who we don't normally look at in studies of constitutional questions create meaning about constitutional issues. For instance, devolution, devolved institutions, independence, borders, and things of that nature. Both the center, but I think scholars more generally have explored quite a bit the role of politicians and policymakers as they form and shape these debates about these kinds of issues. But I think there's so much more that can be done by looking at how various other actors understand and see these issues, right, from the grassroots, civil society, but just more broadly as well, just everyday population, different segments of society, such as business unions, etc. Right? So I think this is what the future holds in the relatively near term for the center.
So thank you for speaking to me, Carlo. We're really excited to have you as director and can't wait to see where we're going to be going next. Thank you.
Me as well. Thank you very much.